and old. My name is Jessica Lombardo, and I am editor-in-chief of Asphalt Contractor magazine. On Hops and Highways, every week we discuss the news of the infrastructure bill, but we're joined today by our friends with Supply and Demand Chain and Food Logistics. They have a L.I.N.K live that they do every week. So we're kind of combining forces for this crossover event today. And if you have not joined us before, we always talk about the beer we are drinking before we dive into the news. So this week, I have a Founder's Mas Agave Prickly Pear Beer. It's aged in tequila barrels, so it's like the perfect sweet and salty summer beer. Dormy, my associate editor, what are you drinking today?
Today, I thought it would be fitting to have a Pallet Jack Cruiser since it's the crossover with Supply Chain. It's a crushable IPA, obviously, made in Door County in Wisconsin. Marina,
wow.
What are you drinking?
So hello, everybody. I'm Marina Mayer, editor-in-chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive, and I am not as high-tech and fancy as they are, but I'm drinking a White Claw because, why not? So, Brielle, I'm going to pass things over to you.
I'm Brielle Jekyll. I'm the associate editor of Food Logistics and SDCE, and today I have a Long Trail IPA, a hazy IPA that's named Juicy because I just got back from visiting the brewery itself, and this is one of its new brews. And this is my day back from vacation, so I'm drinking my vacation beer.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm excited to dive into what we're talking about today. So cheers.
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 Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Woo. Okay, so today what we're here to talk about is infrastructure and why it's necessary to keep goods moving from point A to point B, whether it's by truck, rail, or boat. It's super imperative that our nation's roads and bridges are safe to travel on. Jess, I'll pass things over to you.
Yeah, so in case you've kind of been living under a rock, you know that infrastructure has been all over the news. And after months of debate, our lawmakers in the Senate finally came to agreement on a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. And it's called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And it's the culmination of drawn out, painstaking months of debate that went on between a bipartisan group of senators and the Biden administration. So they worked through a total of 281 amendments to a 2,702-page bill before it was taken up for a final vote. So overall, this bill includes $550 billion in new funding and renewal of an array of programs that were otherwise scheduled to expire at the end of September.
And highlights of this bill include $303.5 billion over 5 years for federal highway programs, which is a 35% increase from previous bills. $40 billion in dedicated resources for bridge repair, replacement, and rehabilitation. And the bill also features a $118 billion bailout of the Highway Trust Fund from the Treasury's General Fund, which is a huge win for the road building industry.
Brielle?
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. The bill includes $55 billion for water projects with a focus on upgrading infrastructure, which is the largest investment in clean drinking water in our nation's history. $66 billion in passenger and freight rail, $65 billion to rebuild the electric grid, another $65 billion to expand broadband internet access, and $39 billion to modernize and expand transit systems, and so much more.
This bill will deliver significant economic benefits to communities and improvements to our roads and bridges to provide a smoother ride for trucks, agriculture, and other industries that primarily travel roadways. This could also decrease the time spent behind wheel, which, as we know, is a big issue in our industry. So let's have a cheers to that.
Cheers. So unfortunately, congestion on our roadways is a huge problem, and one that we're hoping that this increase in funding will hopefully fix. So according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, in 2019, congestion added 37 minutes that would otherwise have been a 30-minute trip to a commute in a typical American city. Traffic congestion on our major highways has led to nearly $75 billion in operational costs and 1.2 billion hours of lost productivity.
That's nuts.
The American Society of Civil Engineers also says there will be an expected 104% rise in annual freight transportation across the U.S. from 2016 to 2045. This increase in freight movement breeds even more challenges to the nation's already aging infrastructure. In order for the nation to take advantage of surging economic growth, capacity for the nation's freight transportation system must be expanded on major highways, trade gateways, rail facilities, and ports.
This infrastructure investment will hopefully improve the reliability of existing intermodal connectors, of which approximately 68% are congested and 56% have pavements in poor condition. Further delaying investments in repairs and new construction will only become more costly and time-consuming.
And our failing infrastructure was truly put on display earlier this summer when the Hernando de Soto Bridge was closed. So this bridge carries I-40 traffic across the Mississippi River between Tennessee and Arkansas and was suddenly closed on May 11th when engineers from the Arkansas Department of Transportation discovered a fractured support beam during a routine inspection. So since then, new information has come to light revealing that the damage of the bridge has been visible and evident as far back as 2016.
Well, while the bridge has been closed, over-the-road truckers are having to take alternate routes, taking an 8-minute detour. This is adding an average daily cost to the trucking industry of $2.4 million per day, according to the American Transportation Research Institute.
And the I-40 bridge is not the only bridge that's in trouble. According to the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, 1 in 3 bridges in the United States are currently structurally deficient. That's 220,000 bridges. But what that really means is that motorists, American people, your moms, dads, cousins, sisters, brothers, they're driving across bridges that are badly in need of repair 171.5 million times every day.
And at that current pace, it would nearly take 40 years to repair this current backlog of structurally deficient bridges. So the estimated cost to repair or replace 45,000 bridges in need of repair, based on average price data from the U.S. Department of Transportation, would be a whopping $41.8 billion.
The good news is that the infrastructure bill does include that $40 billion that Dormy mentioned for bridge repair and rehabilitation over 5 years. And that's the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system. We're going to have a cheers to that. Cheers, ladies.
Cheers. And while bridges will be a key priority in this legislation, there will be many other projects that improve our failing infrastructure. If Congress passes the bill, money will start through existing federal channels to states and cities as soon as October.
And we don't have a lot of details yet about what projects will be coming out of this bill, but we do know that Alaska was a big winner from a project standpoint. So U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski was a key negotiator of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and her state will receive funding for the reconstruction of the Shockwalk Highway, the highway from the Alaskan border to Haines Junction in Canada. Money will also be distributed to the Puerto Rico Highway Program.
Another project that we've heard will come out of the bill would be a major undertaking to connect 12 military bases in 5 southern states. So money would be allocated under the bill to expand Interstate Highway 14 from its 25 miles near Fort Hood, Texas, to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and on to Augusta, Georgia. The proposed 1,300-mile route runs between Interstate Highways 10 and 20 and would primarily upgrade already existing roads, which is great news.
There are many vast and complex projects that will extend over years, such as a new train tunnel under the Hudson River connecting New Jersey and Penn Station in Manhattan. Also, airports across New York State are set to receive a combined $937 million in federal funding. There's also a pipeline of road, transit, and other projects that every state will be able to jump on quickly to make a swift impact.
And the legislation would set aside millions of dollars for individual projects across the country, including $1 million for the restoration of the Great Lakes, $24 million for San Francisco Bay, $106 million for Long Island Sound, and $238 million for the Chesapeake Bay.
So the $550 billion of new funding would clearly touch Americans across the country, with numerous industries and regions of the country scoring benefits from the bill. California, which is our most populous state, will get a minimum of $39 billion, including $25.3 billion for highways and $4.2 billion for bridge replacement and repairs over the 5 years. Texas will get even more for highway projects at $26.9 billion, according to a White House fact sheet. And it would also get $537 million for bridge projects.
The White House has a full list of where funding will be allocated if this bill is passed, and we'll post the fact sheet for you to look at if you're into that kind of thing. We're just really happy to see infrastructure funding as a top priority in the country, and we will drink to that.
Cheers.
So on top of all the benefits to our actual physical infrastructure, the bill will give economic boosts as well. President Biden has been quoted as saying this bill will create millions of good union jobs all across the country in cities, small towns, rural and tribal communities. And 90% of the jobs created will not require a college degree. In fact, the White House says 2 million jobs per year on average are projected to be added over the next decade as a result of this legislation.
The problem is that we're seeing is who will do the work. In the construction industry, the second quarter data from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce showed that 88% of construction contractors are having difficulty finding skilled labor. And of those who reported that difficulty, 35% have turned down work because of these skilled labor shortages. If we don't have the workers, like how will we be able to move these projects forward?
Exactly. And earlier this year, President Biden proposed the American Jobs Plan, which would give $100 billion to fund priorities like expanding registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeships, particularly for women and people of color, wraparound support for dislocated workers, sector-based training programs focused on targeting industries, and job training for justice-involved individuals. Unfortunately, the bipartisan agreement left this funding out.
And it's no surprise that one of the biggest challenges impacting the supply chain to date is labor. The labor shortage in the supply chain industry, yes, it's a real thing, and it's challenging companies on how to operate and plan for the future. Even before the pandemic, Deloitte Research projected that 2.4 million factory jobs could remain unfilled through 2028. The National Association of Manufacturers Outlook survey continues to find that attracting and retaining quality workforce is one of the top business challenges for manufacturers. These problems that will continue to worsen if young talent does not enter the supply chain industry. And that's why it's important for all of our industries, regardless of where you are, to work together to continue to educate today's youth about why the supply chain matters, why infrastructure matters, why being a part of our industries makes a difference and matters.
Absolutely.
One thing we're excited to see in this bill was a provision to address the truck driver shortage. The bill creates a pilot apprenticeship program for drivers under the age of 21, which is really important because one of the major issues in the driver shortage is that millennials and younger personnel don't understand how important and great of a job truck driving can be. So let's have a drink to that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So it's taken many, many, many years for Congress to finally get behind this long imagined goal of legislation to upgrade our nation's infrastructure. But they finally did it. So what is next for this funding bill? So after passing the package in the Senate, they also approved a $3.5 trillion budget resolution, which greenlights funding in key areas in line with the president's legislative agenda. The House, which will return to work on Monday, will also need to approve the bill and the budget resolution before Congress can craft and pass final legislation. Neither bill will get to the president's desk for weeks or even months.
So in closing, be sure to check back with us. I'm sure we'll have some more collaborations in the future to kind of keep everybody abreast of what's going on and what's happening in our different industries. And ladies, thank you for joining our Link Live. We have Hops and Highways and Link Live today. Thank you everybody for joining us as well. And let's finish it off with another cheers.
Cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Happy Friday.
Thank you for being a part of our program today.
Thank you.